Jay Przekurat keeps his top 10 streak going. What's new at ICAST? And the nation just gave us a small preview of what we should expect at Lake Champlain. That and more on episode 184 of the Inside Bassmaster Podcast. Kyle Jesse joining me as always. I'm Ronnie Moore. And Kyle, it's been a couple weeks since we've done a full-fledged podcast. We've talked quite a bit in the middle, in the gaps, but we haven't got to formally do one, so we got to cover some ground on this episode of the podcast. So I apologize for me being out of town, for me working on different projects, and honestly, when we did get a break, I said, "Hey, not today. I can't fully dive in for a full podcast episode today."
Yeah, no, there's been plenty going on, that's for sure. And then you've had even more things outside of Bass going to Wisconsin to do the steel timber sports, and there's so much been going on. It makes it difficult to keep up for sure. But like you said, there has certainly been a lot of things going on here recently with tournaments and ICAST, and then the elites coming up. Like you said, we got a lot to cover, and should be a lot of fun.
Hey, while we're here, I had such a fun time at Steel Timber Sports. So that's something that we have done here at JM on this aspect of it for 20 or 30. Tommy, how long have we done steel?
Since JM has done it since 85.
Oh, so okay, so it's when they started formally competing, yeah. So Steel Timber Sports has been, obviously, it's derived out of like old school lumber and wood cutting techniques. A lot of the events are still based off that, and they started formally competing in 1985, and that was when JM jumped in to start doing it. Jerry and Tommy on the old shows back in the day, and others have joined Tommy, but he's been at the desk since then. So basically, 40 years now that we've been doing Steel Timber Sports. And so I got to go for my first time to experience the championship, and we crowned a new U.S. champion. They will represent almost like the Olympics. And I just want to give you all a taste. If you know what, do me a favor, go subscribe to their YouTube. This is just free promo. Your boy may run both. Who knows? But check out the hot saw competition. So the hot saw is you got to cut 3 complete discs as fast as you can within a line parameter. They have like a foot, which seems like a lot. Maybe it's less. It might be 10 inches to cut 3 complete discs, and this is how quick it goes. So I'm gonna hold the video up. You ready? 5 seconds is sub 5 is like monumental. So I mean, they got to stay within a foot range and use this couple, 100 horsepower, whatever it is, not a normal chainsaw, and they are flying when they do it. It's just, and you're just trying to control a beast. So it was super fun seeing that. We had the springboard competition, which was one of my favorites. The springboard is this deal, if you've seen it, where they gotta cut a notch into the pole, put a board, stand on it, cut another notch, put another board, and now they're 6 feet up in the air, cutting off the top of the block. It is incredible, and they do it in 44
Awesome.
seconds. So super fun. We got to do that live broadcast like normal. I was behind the scenes. Tommy and Kevin were doing the live commentary aspect of it, and it is high pressure. The champion won by 1 point. So you want to talk about maybe a 4-ounce victory? That's what it was. He needs a 4.79 cut, and he got a 4.79 cut. So it's very cool. Um,
Amazing.
but since we last talked on the podcast, we mentioned it. Jay Przekurat wins Lake St. Clair. Got to do that on Bassmaster Live and watch that victory. And Jay is now on a streak, counting that open at St. Clair. He has gotten a top 10 at Murray, top 10 at Wheeler, Smith as well, and then winning St. Clair. He's got 4 straight B.A.S.S. top 10s, and now we're headed to Champlain and St. Lawrence. And then who knows, he may just top 10 the rest of the year, but he did do an interview during the Smith Lake event where he said he's going to have to win AOI. He's going to have to top 10 the last 2. So we'll keep an eye on that. But that final day, I mean, different leaders every day. When you see Jay is so good. I don't know what we're trying to accomplish in talking about St. Clair other than that just Jay Przekurat is absolutely phenomenal. A Highland Lake, spotted bass, largemouth, smallmouth, Florida, except he got some 60th place finishes in Florida this year. He survived Florida. It could be muddy, tough river, smallmouth, natural lake. Jay Przekurat, I don't know if there's any flaws in his game, Kyle.
No, he is certainly one of the most well-rounded anglers on the Bassmaster Elite Series, and I think there's no question about that. And anybody that was paying attention, to his rookie season to where he's at now, I don't think anybody's surprised. Naturally, like you said, if you look at his results for the season and you see the amount of top tens just since the Classic, if you include that, it definitely looks like video game numbers, as the kids say. Pretty amazing stuff from Jay Shakura, and that tournament itself was so awesome, just in the sense that you and I talked about and previewed how many 20-pound bags we thought there would be. I don't know what we said. I don't even remember, but we couldn't have been any further off than we were. I think we undershot it for the whole tournament just on the first day, if I remember correctly. I mean, we could not have been any more wrong about how that played out.
And I'll justify it by saying the weekend before it took like 20 pounds even to win. Like it was not good at all. And so our last thought of St. Clair was Joey Cifuentes winning. But the week prior, it was just not going. And so when it turns on, it turns on. And to see Jay's weights get better every day and end the tournament with 26-1 on the final day is incredible to see that. What was the final weight? 75.5. So on pace for the Century Club after 3 days. That's awesome. I remember St. Clair did that in the fall for the AOI championship when Fighter had like 77 after 3 days, 78, something like that. And then Corey Johnston had 78 at the end of 3 days at the St. Lawrence for the Open. So, and I think Mille Lacs, they were on pace for that as well. So there's only a few places that you could be on pace that could have broke it. So I will give St. Lawrence River kudos that it did break it in 4 days, but some of these events, I don't have any doubt that Jay Shakura could go out and catch 24.5 pounds and be able to maybe break 100 that final day, or any of those other ones. They could have turned into 100-pound lakes, but it is a special week when that happens. Hey, we got to see some guys like Trevor McKinney really get back into that AOI race to qualify for the Elite Series. He was leading going in the final day, ended up 4th place, nothing to shake a stick at there. McKendry, one of his McKendry cohorts, Trey Schroeder, top 5 there. Taku coming off the win at Smith gets 6th. You got some other guys like Blake Smith, Jack York, Kenta, and Brett Cannon rounding out the top 10. And those top 3s, you kind of got a good taste. You got an Elite Series pro who is on a roll with Jay Shakura. You got a recently graduated college angler who won the points race for his division in Aaron Jagfeld from Adrian College. He will be in the bracket. We will see them in the bracket, him and his teammate Elliott, in just a little while. So he'll have a shot at the Bassmaster Classic once again. Jamie Bruce then shows up also in the top 3. Instead of fishing all 9 and narrowly missing out on the elites like he did last year, he decided to fish 3, which is St. Clair, Leech, and Mississippi River, closer to his home. He's a new father. Congratulations to him there. And boy, if you're going to only fish 3, Kyle, way to show out. So with Aaron and Jamie showing up with just one division, riding on their classic hopes, they had great performances there. And it was good to see the top 7 all get over 70 pounds. Crazy. Saw, what was it? The what's the Crush City swim? The Mare.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Trevor got to use. We got to see some plastics like that from Jamie Bruce. I think he was using the Mooch Minnow. Saw a lot of different things, and then to see Jay Shakura catch a couple 5+ pounders. I mean, when you see Jay Shakura get excited on the final day and show a smile, you're like, that's a giant. Like, that's a big one.
Yeah, when he caught the one where he literally just sat down and I mean just sat there for a minute and just like
fell down. Yeah.
put his arms up. It was like, yeah, like you said, he's such a cool, calm character that you don't see that out of him too often. But that was super fun to watch, and boy, we've really hammered home the point. But being able to watch the final day of the live coverage on FS1, throughout the open season has been one of the biggest, one of the things I've enjoyed the most out of this entire season of tournaments. The ones that I haven't gone to, being able to sit on my couch and watch on Saturday, or be in studio with you. I got the chance to do that as well. But But that has been so cool. And I think that has really gained perspective on a lot of people. We can hammer home the point as much as we want about how talented the anglers are in the opens field. And it's always been that way. But when you get to see it, in person on live, and again, for a lot of the guys, this top 10, there were certainly some household names in the top 10, and we've seen that pretty much throughout the season. But some of the names that aren't as household names to the casual fan, getting to see just how good the anglers are, in the opens, and getting to see that again live on TV has been so awesome. And definitely looking forward to the rest of the year as far as the opens are concerned. And I know that's something you and I will dig into once we get past both of these elites. But definitely coming crunch time for qualifying for the Bassmaster Elite Series in 2025.
100%. And to see even guys like Jack York and Trey Schroeder, names that might not be known. Trey made 2 brackets in college, Kyle. Like he's a very, very good angler, but started off really slow, 137th, 84th, 185, 82nd, 93rd, and then he gets a top 5. It's good to see those breakthroughs like that. And Jack York, I mentioned his name, his stats this year. I think he's gotten better in every event. 96th, 96th, 54th, 21st, 27th, 8th, and 8th. So he's coming into his own. He's in the top 10 now. And these guys are just a couple days, 6 guaranteed days left in the season that they could be right there by the Elite Series, especially a Jack York. Trevor McKinney could be right there as well. So
And I
congrats
think
to those guys. And also, it was very cool to see Jamie Bruce and Jay Shakurit allowing us to plug in and see their graphs as well, to see the way some of these fish were reacting. It's always great to have that when we're telling the story, and we're going to have more of that for Champlain and St. Lawrence River, no doubt. But if that's going to be the way they're fishing, that is the best way to tell that story and to stay engaged with it under the water.
Yeah, it's super cool, and something, we haven't really got to do a lot, even pre-forward facing sonar. You got to see some shots on 360 in the past, and down scan, side scan, things of that nature. But I mean, it is certainly a totally new look to live, and it's super, super neat to watch, because if you've used it and you've fished with it, you certainly understand like what's going on, and it gets your heart racing watching live. So it is very cool.
Imagine if we, in the heyday of the Tennessee River, I mean, when the ledges were on fire, if we saw a 6XD or a 10XD just grinding the bottom, and you see just 5 of them coming after it to get it, that would be absolutely insane to see that go down back in the heyday of that. But like all things, we just missed out on that a little bit. ICAST, tell me about it a little bit. What'd you see down there that was new that you think is worth a mention? You guys obviously did a bunch of content. I took actually all of your content and made a 2-hour video on YouTube of every video Bassmaster shot if people wanted to watch the whole thing. And we did our best to keep them grouped, companies grouped together.
Better settle in if you've got any interest on watching that one, because we definitely shot a lot. It's super productive. I think that as a fisherman, it's cool to get to see all the new stuff, and that's the part that frankly I enjoy the most. And it's not even close, but it is fun to produce the content. I mean, there's so much new gear, rods, reels, line, baits, electronics. I mean, you name it. There are so many cool things that we get to see, and it is fun getting to create some content. If you haven't got the chance to see that, like Ronnie said, on YouTube, bassmaster.com, there's a whole ICAST 2024 page that really groups everything together that we shot video wise, photo galleries. It's a lot, and it is fun to do, and frankly I'm glad it's over with, because it's a whirlwind while it's going on. But yeah, I certainly saw some cool things. I would say I'm looking through some of the galleries right now. One of the things that I really enjoyed, so I like rods and reels. I mean, those are the kind of things, like, until you feel, you don't really have much of a sense for it. Like, you can look at a lot of times you can look at a flat side square bill or crankbait or whatever it may be, and you can kind of justify like where you'd use it, how you'd use it, that sort of thing. Rods and reels, to me at least, are something you want to feel, like putting your hands in and actually test out. And one of the things that I was really impressed with, and I think got a lot of buzz at the show. St. Croix came out with a new Black Bass series of rods. Um, when I had saw it prior to the show, I didn't really think much of it. It's just kind of a different price point rod from St. Croix, and didn't really give it a ton of thought until I
You're like,
got to see it.
you're like, well, duh, all the rods are for black bass, you know,
Yeah,
like
right.
what-
Yeah, I was like, if it's a bass fishing rod, sure. But I was so amazed feeling that rod, and I'm sitting here looking at a picture of it now. But I love the color of it. It's like a matte gray finish. It's a beautiful rod. It's got cork handles, which is super untraditional for St. Croix and the way that they do things. Um, the number of actions. I mean, I just sat there and just played around with different rods and feeling different things. And it is a very, very comfortable rod for a really affordable price. That was one thing that really caught my eye. Been really big on the Crush City plastics. Last year, obviously we got to see those firsthand for the first time. And I use a lot of those. The cleanup craw, I use a ton. I actually just caught some fish on it Saturday. It's a great trailer, great Texas rig. They obviously had some new things. The
you have to
mooch
tell me about that. You have to tell me about that lake that James Hall has under wraps that only a few people know about, it seems.
I don't know that it's just a few people know about it. I mean, there's a whole series on bassmaster.com about this lake,
Oh,
the
so
the
he's
Lake
fishing
Y
the Lake
project.
Y. So he's fishing Lake Y. Oh, okay.
He's
Okay.
he's basically been the mastermind behind Lake Y. So I mean, you can't even say it's a selfish thing, because he's put a ton of work into making that a good fishery. And
Well, I
it's
searched Lake Y on the map and I didn't find it, so I don't know what the name of it actually is, you know.
I wouldn't worry about the actual name of it. That's not even really important to what's going on. Um, but I'm just looking through some of the things. Obviously, the mooch minnow. Having a hard time remembering what they had came out with another creature bait that was really really cool, and I like that a lot. One thing that got a ton of buzz.
Tell me,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
go, no, no, no. You tell me what the buzz is.
I was gonna say one of the things that got a ton of attention at ICAST was the Lowrance Eagle Eye
Yeah,
unit. And that's basically a 9 inch.
thousand
Yeah,
bucks.
for $1,000 with down scan, forward facing, down facing. I mean, like everything you'd need in electronics. I mean, we all know how expensive transducers and graphs and electronics in general can get. But for Lowrance to go out and manufacture a unit at a great price point, I mean,
For
that
the
is
working man.
people were really fired up about that, and I didn't know a whole lot about it until I got to talk to some guys there at Lowrance, and it was really eye-opening. I was very very impressed with that, and I'm not the only person that said that. There was
Well,
a
I think that
lot of folks that said similar things.
it could really bring down the price point of some things, knowing that that's out there. Obviously, screen size is something to be desired if you want a bigger screen. That its limited capabilities there, but if that could bring the price point down, then it's going to be much more accessible to anglers in general. I'm not. It is very accessible to tournament anglers because if you're a tournament angler, you're already past the point of spending money on things you don't need. So you're going to get the forward facing that you desire at whatever price point it is. But for those who are smaller boats, smaller crafts, younger kids getting into it, it's going to be much more affordable for sure.
No
I
doubt.
did notice that. Did you talk to Corbishley? Did you talk to my boy Corbishley in the
I did
booth?
not. I got
Oh,
to see
okay.
him. I
Okay.
got to see him in person. I saw him walking by a couple times. Never had the chance to talk to him. Last year and the years previous, I've got the chance to talk to him, but didn't get to this year. Um,
He's we were college partners for at least like 2 or 3 tournaments, right?
I do know that.
Yeah,
I do
and
know that.
he's now $100,000 winner. Like unreal. This is ridiculous, you know. If only I had different dreams and wasn't pursuing this for a dream, you know, what could have been. Anyways, so I had the question. Tell me about the BSE. That was something that I'll be honest. Nick over there, informative angler. I love Nick, but the way he posed the video 2 or 3 days before ICAST, talking about coming out with a whole brand new category of baits, I thought it was going to be different than just a big piece of plastic you can skip. I really
Yeah.
did.
So
But
it took.
what is it? It looks like one of those beetle bugs that in the Mummy Returns is gonna get in your wrist and like dig into your skin, and now it's in your body, like type of thing. But I don't know.
Yeah, it's one of those baits. To be honest, I when you said that, it didn't register exactly what you were talking about at first, because I do remember seeing the best skipper ever.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Naturally, we had that on the YouTube live stream. That was one of the ones that I picked up and was very intrigued with. But I'm trying to find a picture of it right now. Yeah, like you said, it is certainly
It
a
literally
big
looks like
hunk
a
of
river
plastic.
rock. It looks like a
Yeah.
river rock with a couple tentacles on it, or like a little, antennas off 3 or 4 off each side. Yeah.
I'll say this. I'll say it's got to be one of those baits that like you have to throw before you can give an honest assessment, because I mean it's the same thing with like the heavy plastics that have come out, like
Yeah,
the depths and the
Bomba and stuff. Yeah.
yeah, and the Missile Odyssey came out
Scat.
with one last year. All those baits, I mean, if you look at them, you would think that's got to be the goofiest thing of all time. And then you actually consider, the principles that you can do with it, and being able to fish it weightless because it's a heavier piece of plastic. Uh, I'm intrigued to be able to fish the BSE, just for the sake of like, I this, but like I grew up fishing lakes that have a lot of boat docks, and skipping a jig is something that I love to do and do a lot. So it'd be interesting to throw something like the BSE that is a little different, something the fish haven't seen before, and I'd find out if they bite it. I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to find out, is if it works. So
Well, and
definitely interesting.
getting it in places where they live is the first step. And so if that does skip so well, even for if it skips well for young anglers, then that's going to get them more honed in on the way you're supposed to skip, and then also getting in places. So I'm interested. But as a dock skipper, when I saw it come out, I was like, man, like I am intrigued. But
It's
I did have to give Nick a little hard time because the video promoting, I was like, well, what could Big Bite come out with that's going to change the categories? I was thinking through all the categories and was like, man, I'm really interested. So I was checking back every single day. They hooked me. They did. That video got me. I was looking every day, and I was like, wait, is the BSC what they're talking about? That's the deal. Okay. Okay, I can ride with that. And obviously pairs now with their BFE, the best flipper ever. They're now, I see what they're doing now. Cool. Well, ICAST come and gone, Opens come and gone. Nation event was most recent for the Bassmaster schedule. We had that junior championship as well, high school championships going on as we're doing this podcast. But the Nation at Champlain, I often complain about other leagues that have red, logos and stuff, putting tournaments right on top of ours, like, or right before it, which they are going to be at the St. Lawrence River this week when we will be there next week, type of thing. But we did that to ourselves. We put the Nation event 2 weeks before Champlain. So, or 2 weekends before Champlain. And boy, was I surprised to see green ones show up in droves. Now, Kyle, you can explain it. There are a couple different reasons why the largemouth showed up. I have investigated and found out more as well, but wind was a big deal for the Nation event.
Yeah, certainly. Lake Champlain is like any other Great Lake, although it's not, considered that. It is very difficult to get around when it gets windy. All those lakes in the northeast part of the country, those big smallmouth fisheries, when the wind gets up, that's something that's been talked about forever and ever. It is hard to navigate. It's super hard to fish. Regardless if you're throwing at a spot or you're using your electronics to, use live sonar, regardless what you're doing, it's hard to navigate when that's the case. And it sounded like, from what we had heard, that the wind played a major factor in that. And it is awesome seeing on the homepage of bassmaster.com, seeing largemouth at the Champlain Nation being such a factor each and every day. Day one rolls by, and your day one leader has largemouth, and you're looking around, you're like, man, that's awesome.
Big Frank,
Like,
24.5 pounds. Let's go.
yeah, you're like, that's freaking cool. Like, that's something we didn't see much last year at all during the Elite Series event. And then, my second thought was, we'll see what happens. It's only day one. One day is one thing, but doing it for 3 days. And then to find out on the final day that, majority of the top guys fishing on the final day were also fishing for largemouth. And then Mark Burgess, the eventual winner, you know, fishing for largemouth. I put a quote in my fantasy column for the Champlain event, basically his first quote in the Gamer, basically saying that, when he signed up for the tournament, he knew Live Scope would play for smallmouth, and that's not his deal. I was in my total comfort zone this week. I had a flipping stick. with me the whole time, and I did a little bit of chatterbaiting and square billing, and that was the right decision. And I read that and I was like, that's awesome. Like if we get a good bit of that mixed in, it seems like we'll kind of go back to the Champlain of old where largemouth and smallmouth. I can remember having the conversation with you, and you talked about it on live a lot. In the past, you couldn't win with one or the other. It had to be a mixture of the two. Like basically nobody over the course of time, in the last decade until last year, was able to do it with one species specifically. And then last year, it seemed like even the guys that largemouth fish, the largemouth fishing just wasn't that great. Like it wasn't, the smallmouth fishing was fantastic, and I think that was part of the reason that they dominated so much. But it was like I remember seeing Jason Christie on live and some of those guys, early on that were struggling largemouth fishing. You're like, man, what is going on? But the fact that potentially we're going to see more mixed bags and things that we're used to seeing in the past from Champlain, super exciting, and I can't wait to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I think that so I called Big Frankie Appaluccia. If you don't know him, he's a Jersey boy. He's not the Jersey boy, but he is a Jersey boy. Went to the University of Alabama and fished the opens for a little bit. He made the college championship almost every year. He fished with Logan Shaddix, who was a great angler from down south as well. And so I called him and talked to him, and I said, so question, I know it was blowing, but do you think it's the nation angler skill with forward facing sonar? Like, is that the reason when it started blowing, everyone had to go and do something different? And do you think the elites would have stuck it out to do the smallmouth game? Like, needless to say, like, not no way, shape, or form throwing shade, but just like that's a true thing. Like, when it gets tough on a certain thing, you go to another plan, whereas others will see it through. They will continue to do it and maybe have a breakthrough. And so that was a big question, and he thought that it was just not feasible at times. He said that the water temperature was around 80 already, and so we know that Michigan and Wisconsin and places like that have been very warm already this year, and that's kind of expedited the water temp rise. But these fish aren't acting like it's summertime, late summer, I'm out deep because the water's 80 degrees. There was still a lot of fish shallow. And so with that water being high, there's two different factors. Last year it was high for the elites, and largemouth seemed more spread out, and it was very difficult. Water being high now with still a good contingent of fish. He said it was actually high enough that places that have 6 inches of water had more water to be able to hold fish. And there's a lot more flow coming through certain areas. So some areas maybe had a little bit deeper water on them than normal. And so that is one reason that the largemouth factored better. But overall, I just think that it's just one of those ebbs and flows. Like even down in Ticonderoga, I got a text this morning from Justin Brouillard, who was like, night tournament, 3-fish derb, 3 for 15 last night, three for 15 out of tie. And so at about the time I was about to quit it, I'm about to quit talking about tie, I think a lot of Elite Series guys took notes seeing the largemouth. I know that Pangrak was in that tournament. He's going to be fishing Grand to maybe make the Elite Series or the Classic. So I know he's going to be happy to be doing that. He was one of those that was all smallmouth and scoping out deep. He made it work to get a top 5. But largemouth ended up winning. And so I wonder if some of those bay fish that Fighter and, those guys, Hackney and stuff, have notoriously probed to be successful, is that a viable option again? My biggest worry for those guys is after getting their butts handed to them last year with all smallmouth and being out deep, have they sworn off the largemouth because they don't want to get beat by that again? And now they miss a bite because they don't trust it anymore. Like it's you go to zig and you should have zagged, and it's like, oh shoot, now I'm trying to, should I go and zig or can I go back to zagging? And so
that's the way it felt. That's the way it felt last year. Like that tournament was over and you thought to yourself, we might never see guys largemouth fish at Champlain again because it was so good catching those just giant smallmouth, you're like, I don't know that many guys are even going to try to fish for the largemouth anymore. And then you have exactly like you said, what we had this year happen, and you're like, we might see some largemouth play again, which is to me is super exciting because, anytime we talk about it at that, all the time when it comes to Elite Series tournaments, when you get diversity in what guys are doing and different patterns and watching them play out, I think that's super interesting. And who doesn't like seeing that?
Yeah, and the fact that in 20-mile-an-hour winds, it did take 21 a day basically to win the event. So the fish are still there. Maybe the smallmouth aren't grouped up to where they were for the elites last year, and the largemouth are where they should be, and that's why we see a big swing there. So very interesting. Let's go back and look at, because 2020 Polinick won last week of July, first week of August. So exactly 4 years ago, like today, or today as in the second when this airs, Polinick won that event on all smallmouth. And then if we go to 2021, when Schmidt was basically 50-50, it was the second week of July. It was the 8th through the 11th. And then last year when it was all smallmouth, it was mid-August, like it's going to be now. Or actually, we're going to be within the realm of the first week of August, and this was the 2.5 weeks into August. So definitely earlier may lend itself to being largemouth, and so I'm thinking you can welcome a few largemouth minded guys that have, I think you can return to what has worked for anglers in the past at Champlain will work now. I think that you can, the Schmitz and the fighters, those guys who have had success, Scott Martin, I think you can invite them back in. I think that that's a possibility, and some of those guys will need it. So why don't we get into it? Let's preview Champlain by picking some fantasy teams. Kyle, it's coming down to the wire, and I am, the Game 7 of the World Series has started, and everyone's getting in their seats to watch it, and I am still at the house. That's how far away I am in fantasy fishing. 66%. I still hadn't even gotten dressed for the game yet, and they're singing the anthem. So hopefully I get dressed quick and I make it just in time, and these last two can be good for me.
What's important though is you haven't quit altogether, because I think that would be an easy thing
I'm
to do
still
as well.
showing up every day. Still
don't,
showing up.
we certainly don't really get the choice to do that. So we're just going to fight through it, and we're going to build towards next year. And with it, we're going to start this rebuilding process together. But I'm slightly better. Rapala at 80% even, like 80.0%.
Slightly? That is 14%, Kyle. The only people I've beat are people who forgot to set their lineup one week. Like, come on now.
But I will say the thing that I'm most proud of is Drain the Lake at 98.2%. So doing really well there. Top three. I mean, I'm ranked 336th in the country right now. So
I'm at 91, so you got me there as well. But I'm in the 90s. I'm in the dark
yeah.
green. I'm in the dark green.
And I think what's so fun about Drain the Lake, and we've talked about this dozens of times, but like when you factor in like the game planning of it, we were having that conversation here in the office the other day with April, and that's what she was saying. She was like, not being an expert, like I don't love Drain the Lake because I have a hard time, scheduling the anglers out basically for which tournaments. And I told her, I said, really, I think that's what I like the most about it is like basically trying to pick each angler as if like what tournament do they have the best chance to win? That's like kind of my mindset is like who do I think has the best chance to win? Or if I pick a guy like, if you look at a guy like Patrick Walters or Greg Hackney or some of the guys that are very versatile and have wins at different, variety of places, you think like which of these tournaments do you think they would win the most? Like what's the best chance? And picking your roster like that each week is very fun. And I know that you do it differently, which kind of handicaps you a little bit, doing it like all before the season, as where I just kind of do it as I go, which I'll give you a little leeway. That is certainly tougher
Hey, I
to
might
make
switch
those
it up just
calls.
to see. Like I might do
'Cause
it tournament by tournament
The
next year. I still
one
you still
thing,
have to preview it out though. You still
sure,
have to be smart.
I still do that, but the difference is like you can't account for momentum and the
Oh
way
yeah.
guys are fishing. And if you wait a little bit, I make like a general idea of who's gonna go where, but it's mostly mental versus pre-picking, for sure before the season starts. So it is a little different. I'll give you a little leeway there.
Well, since I got nothing to lose, I'll go first. I think in bucket A, I don't know, and you can advise me on this. I don't know if you can actively pick someone and you can account that they're going to maybe target both largemouth and smallmouth. Like it's so hard for us to pick
It's hard to
knowing if they're
tell.
going to do that or if they're going to go all smallmouth, if they're going to go all largemouth. But I feel like if I had to pick a guy who's going to go do some smallmouth in the morning, some largemouth midday, and go back out for some smallmouth, I like Kyle Patrick for that style. I like Kyle Patrick. I really want to pick Jay Shakirat. I'm an idiot for not picking Jay Shakirat. He's going to get top 10s till he's top, just like Patrick Walters. You pick him until he like really royally screws you, and then you take a week off. That's all it is. But honestly, the week he screws you, he's going to bounce back. So you have to expect to pick him the next week. So you could feasibly, I'll give the advice. You can lock in Jay Shakirat for any game mode going forward that you want. Lock him in. He is one of the safest guys. But I got to win, Kyle. I have to pick guys and go on a risk. And it doesn't make as much sense saying it out loud because if I think Jay Shakira can win, then I should put him on my team. But I also think Kyle Patrick has shown the largemouth spotted bass at Smith Lake. I think he's shown the ability to catch all largemouth. He knows how to catch all smallmouth. I think I could see him doing both. And I'm A-okay with picking Kyle Patrick in bucket A.
Yeah, it is hard to pick. I mean, when you put it like that, yeah, it's hard to say what guys will do, like what their pattern will be. But you kind of, make your best guess. But I think bucket A is very interesting in the same exact reason that you just brought up is when you look down, granted, bucket A is almost always like this, any year, any given time, halfway through the season or later. But there's a ton of great value picks in bucket A. I mean, Tyler Williams at
Great
2%.
value, like off-brand picks. Is that what you're saying?
No, great value as in like their lower percentage, of course.
Kroger brand over here.
So many anglers that are sub 10% or sub 8% really that it's like I wouldn't be surprised if they won the event. Like that's how stacked bucket A is. And I'm also going to take the same approach as you and take a lower percentage angler, not quite as low as the one you picked, but I'm going with Cody Huff. I think Cody Huff has just had such a rock solid of year this year. Just seems like everything he's doing is right. He's just making right decisions. He hasn't missed a cut all year long. That was me knocking on wood there if you couldn't hear it. Factor that in with the fact that Cody Huff also almost won the event last year. We've talked a lot about how the largemouth could play and how that will change the tournament potentially. But at the end of the day, like I think the guys that were successful at doing that last year should have an opportunity to do that again this year. How different will it be? I can't say. I have no idea, but I'm just guessing that a guy like Cody Huff with the momentum he's got and the successful history at Champlain, I love it. I mean, he's got a great chance to rattle off a couple really good finishes and have a chance at AOY. So Cody Huff, bucket A.
So if you're trusting him, because you right now have the opportunity to pick Justin Hamner and Trey McKinney, if you're picking him, is Cody Huff your angler of the year?
I don't know. I haven't
That's a hard question. Do you think that he can come from third, 20 points back or whatever it is? Do you think he can win AOY if you're trusting him at Champlain?
I think it can win AOY, certainly. Yeah, no question. I have no doubt that he can. I'm not necessarily saying that I think he will. I'm just saying that I have my faith put in Cody Huff in bucket A for Lake Champlain. That's all I'm going to say there,
Okay.
Mr. Ronnie Moore.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. I haven't made my decision as far as who I think will win Angler of the Year at this point.
Well, for the next episode of the podcast, previewing St. Lawrence, if it's still close, we will make our official who we think will end up rising. I hope we have 4 guys within 10 points. Like, I hope
It'd
we
be
do.
awesome. It
I
really
hope we
would be
do.
so much fun for the final event.
Trey. Appreciate you. I know it doesn't help you any, but it's now made it really dramatic. Let's go to bucket B. Who you got?
Bucket B, I'm going basically higher percentage from here on out. And I'm just taking a lot of safe picks just because I there's certainly risk that you can take in each bucket, but I'm going Taku E2. I think every time I've not picked Taku in an event where smallmouth are a factor, fish that are suspended, or any tournament where you can really utilize your electronics and finesse tactics. I mean, it's no secret that Taku is one of, if not the very best at doing that. And obviously 33.4% as we're shooting this, that's a super high player percentage. You get Koya for a little less than that. Taku is the highest in the bucket, but I'm trusting that that's a safe pick. And I think that's why I'm going with Taku. Not because I don't think there's anybody in the bucket that could beat him. There's certainly plenty of those guys that could, but again, I'm just going safe in bucket B with Taku.
I picked Kyle Welcher, and I picked Kyle Welcher because I think whether he's all largemouth, all smallmouth, or trying to do a mixed, I think he learned something monumental day 2 at Champlain. They did day 1, and he was 70th place or 65th. Bless me. Over here doing the Quinn and Williams. Sorry. I think he learned something monumental where he was in the 70s or 60s after day 1 last year, and then had such a big bag, jumped in, made the cut, and then had another big bag and jumped up and finished really solid and ended up gaining control of the AOY in that event. He closed out AOY at the St. Lawrence, but he won AOY because he figured something out day 2 at Champlain. So I feel like I'm going to ride with Welcher, and that's not even, like I said, not species dependent. I think I just feel like he's going to be one that shocks us, or somebody's going to be shocked, and I won't be shocked. I think that he learned something really valuable last year that he'll carry in.
I like that pick.
Yeah. And there's a lot of good anglers in there. There's a lot of good anglers you could pick to do both. Largemouth and smallmouth. There's a lot of anglers that are going to just be smallmouth. And then you've got John Cox, who's probably going to go to Ticonderoga for some reason. So
that was actually my backup pick. But as I was doing my backup
wait. Your backup was Kyle or Cox?
Cox, but that's
Okay.
what I was going to say. When I first wrote it, Kyle Welcher was my backup because of that exact reason. I just thought that what he showed last year at the final 2 Northern events really was an eye opener. And when I saw him sitting down there at 1.1%, I'm like, man, that's not a bad pick at all. So I like that. Ronnie, who do we have in bucket C?
Well, bucket C, I got a guy who's outside the classic cut that has won at Champlain before and is one of the best anglers at Champlain, at least on a national level, and that's Brian Schmidt. I think that my next 2 picks, this is going to be bold. I think that my next 2 picks will somehow manage to make the classic. They will have 2 phenomenal events and they will make the classic. And so Brian Schmidt's my bucket C, and strictly off of he was able to manage 50-50 smallmouth, largemouth when he won in 2021. He knows based off of water level readouts whether he wants to check an area or not. Like, he's already ahead of the game. He knows. And so he'll know to check some of those areas. He'll be smart with it. And I think that he loves managing that game. It's kind of like a guy who fishes an area because of the tide and fishes it all day, and a guy who runs the tide. I feel like I can trust Brian Schmidt to run the tide in tournaments, and I feel like I can trust him to do both largemouth and smallmouth. So I'm picking him because he may have a lot of water to himself, honestly, with that strategy.
You and I share the same pick in bucket C. I also went Brian Schmidt. When I first sent
Greg
my
Hackney
roster,
was so tempting. Greg Hackney was so tempting.
For me, who was really tempting, to be honest, at a pretty manageable player percent at 3.5% was Luke Palmer. Luke Palmer just narrowly missed out of a top 10 last year. We just published a video to bassmaster.com where he's talking about how Champlain is probably his favorite lake that he's ever fished. And I get another guy that I think will focus on smallmouth if I had to guess, because he's become a very good smallmouth angler. But again, could certainly do both. And I would not be surprised at all to see Luke Palmer have a really good event, but also just went with what I thought was the safest pick. Brian Schmidt obviously didn't have as good of an event last year and still was in the 20s, I believe. So, I mean, that just puts it into perspective. It's like, I think the ceiling is high with both of those guys, but the floor may be lower with Brian Schmidt in a way, just based on his just abundance of success at Champlain. So at 15.3%, that's not bad.
His floor is higher. You're saying like he's
Yes.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Like his low points at Champlain are better than most people's high points at Champlain.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like last year was last year was a rough year, in that sense, when you compare a lot of his finishes. I think I wrote it down. I did not, but no, I mean, I think that his just consistency there, and like you said, has won a lot of pro events there. I think that it's kind of a no-brainer in a lot of ways, and somebody in bucket C could easily win that's not Brian Schmidt. I just think that that's a really safe pick. And Ronnie,
and he's about 29 points from what the classic cut line is right now. And I talked to Tom Abraham from Bassmaster Radio the other day. The classic cut line is now down to 42. It starts out at 40. Justin Hamner is the classic champ. He's in the obviously leading AOY, so it goes down to 41. He's going to double qualify. And then 42 is because Jay Shakir just won St. Clair. So as long as Jay fishes Leech and Mississippi River not far from his home, then he'll double qualify and it'll bump to 42. And who knows if it goes down to 43. But I would expect 29 points, very doable with two events, and especially if they're in your comfort zone. So he's my bucket C. I'm glad he's your bucket C as well. And or no, he's not your bucket. Wait, didn't you say it was?
He's
but
my bucket C.
Luke Palmer was another one you were thinking about.
He was the one that I was really considering. And I think we'll have a really good event there as well.
Do you think that we're going to be matching
on bucket
our
D?
Bucket D?
I do think we're going to match on bucket D. Based on what you said a minute ago, I absolutely think that you have Seth Fighter in bucket D.
I do. I'm very confident. I'm very confident in Seth. We got to talk to him before the Alabama swing. He was not looking forward to the Alabama swing. Ended up having two pretty good, let me see, I would say great, for based on how his season's gone, pretty great finishes in the Alabama swing. He got 43rd at Smith and 21st at Wheeler. Two great ones, two above average ones. He now needs two great ones probably to make the classic, being another 11 spots behind Schmidt. He's not only 11 spots, but he's about 33 points behind Schmidt as well. So now he's about 60, 70 points behind. He's got to catch him, and I think he will. I think this will be the return of normalcy. Last year's smallmouth swing had a scratch in our heads. A lot of smallmouth anglers missed the classic due to their poor smallmouth swing. I could see him bouncing back and really feeling comfortable again. And who wouldn't want to see, a stealth fighter just pegged in a roof of his mouth and Seth yelling, with his Mountain Dew in his back pocket. That's just Champlain, in the summer. So for that reason, I think he's got to have it, and I think he's going to get it. He's got to have a good one. He's got to have a great one. And I think he's going to get it in bucket D.
I'm right there with you. I think that,
and that's a huge percentage as well. 38 is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very big. And that, for me, that's three in a row that are pretty high. Taku being in the 30s, Brian Schmidt was at 15, and then Seth Fighter also being in the 30s. So hence the reason I went a little, under the radar in bucket A in a way, based on the percentages. But no, I agree with you. I think Seth, having that positive momentum and then going to two places that he's historically done really well. I mean, Champlain, about the only thing that eludes him on Champlain is a win. And it seems like just based on past events, it almost just feels like that elite win is going to come at Champlain. Like it's just going to happen at some point in time. Like one day or another, the stars are going to align, and he's going to have another one of those opportunities and cash in on it. And for all we know, it could be this time. So certainly something to keep an eye on. But moving to Bucket E, I'm very interested of who you're going to have in Bucket E, because I don't think we're going to have the same picks, or maybe we will. So what are we
Well,
looking at in Bucket E?
you got to go first then, because I've gone first with Schmidt and I've gone first with Fighter. I need you to carry the boat here.
I'm going high percentage again, and I hate to do it because again, I do love picking lower percentage players, not because like I just do it to have fun with it, but like I just tried my best to play the percentages and try to pick anglers that I think are getting overlooked. A lot of times it works out, a lot of times it doesn't. I am going pretty high percentage all the way around this tournament. So with that being said, I'm going Joey Cifuentes in bucket E. It's been well documented, how poorly he's done, this year in his sophomore season. But I just think he's such a good smallmouth angler. Like he's got nothing to lose. Again, he's just not had a great season this year. With nothing to lose, two smallmouth events back to back, two places he did really well last year. Um, I just think that he's going to catch them. I really think that he's going to turn it around and have two really good ones to finish the year, and that can do a lot for an angler's confidence. So I see Joey Cifuentes turning it around for the final two.
I'll say going into the St. Lawrence, you're going to have more people that are high profile in the sport of fishing that have to win to make the classic, more than I've ever seen. Like we're going to have at least 12 guys that are nationally known, long resumes of success that have to win the St. Lawrence. So it's going to be interesting. Joey's in that bucket as well. Anybody in bucket E, you got to win the last one to probably make the classic at this point. It's getting way too far away, that classic line. We will welcome Jamie Hartman and Ed Lochran back to the Elite Series. Jamie, I think, what did Jamie miss? Jamie missed Murray, or did he miss? I think Jamie missed Murray, Wheeler, and Smith, and then Lochran missed Wheeler and
He
Smith.
he was at Murray, was not at either of the two Alabama ones. Jamie Hartman, that is.
So both of them have missed the Alabama swing. Hartman expected because of his doctor note well ahead. Lochran because the day of day one he could not get out of bed and had some emergencies with some kidney stones that he needed to get worked on. He has rested up and had some procedures, and Lochran is back along with Jamie Hartman. So we'll be at 101 unless anything changes from now till then. 101 for the Champlain Elite, and both those guys are in these buckets. And I'd say confidently, both those guys are excited about Champlain. They both have really good track records on Champlain, top tens, and they probably think this could be a place I could get a win. And so we'll see how they hop in. A few years ago, Brad Watley did that. He had a medical hardship, had some procedures done, was able to get that corrected, and was able to come back for a wahi and had a good event. Trying to stay out of the way from guys, and had a great event. Bucket E though. Scott Martin is one of the best resumes on the FLW tour at Champlain. I feel like it's got to return success-wise. It's got to return. I think his first year in 2021 on the Elites, he had his worst finish ever. Like I think he got like 98th, and then last year it wasn't good. I think I don't want to assume. Let me see. I'll click it and make sure. Last year at Champlain, 49th. So he made the cut. But yeah, 2021, 87th. Like just, it was just terrible. I think he's gonna catch them. I don't know if they're brown or green, and honestly, he's got to catch them, Kyle. It's been interesting to see, and I don't want to get off on a tangent because we're picking fantasy teams, but Scott had such a high pedigree and reputation coming into the Elites, and his 3 seasons on the Elite Series prior to this year, he was 42nd his first year, made the Classic, one of the last ones in. I think that was the year where, like, after he was the last one to make it in at the last event, like the last 3 opens all went back to the Elite field, and so he was like safe at the end of the year, but like at the end of his job being done, I just did enough. And then the next year, I think he got like 38th and barely made it. And then last year was like 42nd and barely missed it. First one out, 44th, something like that. So he has been in the 40s for AOY every year. And this year, uncharacteristically, he is all the way down in like 95th place, 96th place. So he's got to catch him to raise that average up to stay within the realm of qualification for sure. You don't ever want to be close going into the last event with the mechanical issues that could happen on the big water. I think that if he gets a good one here, gains some points, and gets a good one next week, he can improve his average quite a bit with only 3 past years, no drop years for him yet. He has a good event, has a good season, stays on the Elite Series. Next year would be his 5th year, and that is when his drop would come into place. So then he could drop this 96th or 85th, whatever he ends up in points, he could drop it. So we'll keep an eye on Scott, see if he's got the clutch gene, because I know he still wants to make the Bassmaster Classic, still wants to win it, to do something his father didn't do and bring a trophy to the Martin household there. But overall, I actually almost said that he has to win the St. Lawrence to make the Classic, but he has made the Classic from his Opens win at Okeechobee. So Scott's going for it. No reason not to.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. To that credit is that, a guy like Scott Martin, having already qualified at Okeechobee the first week of the season, which seems like it was 9 years ago, has nothing to lose. So I mean, you can fish free and fish to try to win, and that's a dangerous spot to be in.
But don't be reckless. Yeah, don't be reckless, because if you go finish 90th,
sure,
it's gonna be hard to just make up enough points in the last event.
So yeah, a lot to keep an eye on there, of course, as far as the Rapala Bassmaster Fantasy Fishing is concerned. Ronnie, let's direct our attention over to Falcon Rod's Bassmaster Drain the Lake Challenge. In the past, the way we've done this is we will, list out 4 anglers, and then the other person will give out 4, and then we'll go final 4. So, Ronnie, give me your first 4 anglers for Drain the Lake at Lake Champlain.
I'm going to give you the 4 expected names that you'd hear me say, and that would be Austin Felix, Kiyoya Fujita, Taku Ito, and Brian Schmidt.
Okay, so I'll go Koya Fujita.
Okay.
Joey Cifuentes, excuse me, Tyler Williams, and Alex Redwine being my first 4.
Okay. To add to Felix, Fujita, Ito, and Schmidt, I've got Jay Shakurit, Justin Hamner, Ed Lochran, and Cole Sands.
My final 4 being Seth Biter, David Mullins, Paul Mueller, and Jeff Gustafson. And I'll be completely honest, there's definitely some possibilities to change. Who
do you got left after that? Yeah,
that's exactly that's what I'm trying to figure is like the 8 guys that I want to use at the St. Lawrence, like I know pretty well, and I want to see who that would leave out and kind of factor in who would be maybe potentially better options for this tournament. So this is going to be one of the very few that it's possible by the time we get to Thursday morning early, I might change. So I'm just going to be honest.
I wanted to key in on a few there that I mentioned. Obviously, Schmidt matches. We've talked about Shakurit. Taku, you mentioned him. Kiyoya, we know why. Austin Felix, very, very good here. Ed Lochran, I had just brought up why. Justin Hamner, very good last year, and this is a type of body of water I expect him to be successful at, which means Cole Sands. And people may say, why Cole Sands? I think that he is very apt to do well in this body of water. And also, I was kind of glad that I hadn't used him earlier the year and was rooting for him somewhat in this event, because after his mistake at Murray, he made a post, and I don't know, I don't think I can go back and find it quick enough, but he made a post saying that this could cost him his Elite Series career, because after having just 2 seasons, your average is highly influenced. So he was one of the last guys to make the Classic last year, so in the 40th, 41st range. And if he has a 98th at Murray, and just a complete mishap there. He was dropped down in the 90s in points, and it was like if I'm below 70th, I'm going to be at risk, and he would be at risk. He has battled back, Kyle, and is sitting currently in 61st in points, and that's basically him and Bob Downey are having very similar seasons. Bob's obviously been a guy we've been talking about that, trying to make the Classic with only 8 events fished out of 9 because he missed the Harris Chain due to the birth of his son. We've talked about that. Very good, feel-good story that he could pull off. He's right there in 48th. And if you're only trying to get to 42 or something right now, very close. But Cole, basically, with that mishap, he got 2 points or something, 3 points. Like he's done. He didn't really fish that tournament. And for him to still be above 70th the way he is, I feel very good for him. And so if we think about that, I want to click right here. He had 16 pounds at Murray day 1. Had a issue with his fishing license, whether it's not the correct dates or whatever the case may be. So his day 2 weight when it was revealed didn't count, or his day 1 weight didn't count, and his day 2 weight did count. One of the two. Let me see what it says. His day 1 weight did not count. His day 2 weight did count. He had 16 pounds both days. That would have put him 16 pounds a day, had him in 34th place. Let's just say he maintains and finishes 34th. That is 60 plus points to his tally. And if he had 60 plus points, he's at 387, and he is in the Bassmaster Classic. So Cole Sands has fished good enough to be in the Classic, but small errors, like we talked about when I went on a rant a few episodes ago, doing the small things right can help you showcase how big your skill is. Those little mistakes really hurt those, and so that was a mistake that almost cost him. He still has work to do at these last 2, but really pulled himself out of the gutter. So I think Cole Sands could really shine this week at Champlain. So
yeah, I like that.
Just one designation there of why.
Certainly a good point, and it's something to be said for guys that have a lot to be fishing for. We talked about certain anglers kind of either being locked in one way or another, like they can't make the Classic, or they are so far ahead that they're certainly going to make it. But there's certainly a lot to be said for guys that are fishing for something, and whether it be for requalifying, for being on the outside looking in at the Classic. There's a lot of things that you have to factor in when it comes to the final 2 events of the season.
Absolutely. We've got Angler of the Year up for grabs, Rookie of the Year, Classic cut line is going to be tight as usual, and requalification. If you're in 70th or better, you are safe. Everyone below 70th, we like to call them at risk. At risk for sure. Got to make sure you do your job. Kyle, see you next week. We'll get on the podcast again, preview St. Lawrence after Champlain's done. We're doing this one a little early. You're getting this one 3 days early, folks. It's not the Monday before the tournament. I'm going to go ahead and post it Friday before the tournament. So if anything changes, don't shoot the messengers. We didn't do anything. All right. See you, bud.